when Andy and I were putting this workshop together, it's very much that you can't really start talking about the methods and techniques that allow you to capture great moments until you kind of understand some of the stuff that needs to underpin it.
Yeah, to make good photos.
Exactly.
And I think, like you kind of said it a minute ago, it's like the idea that people call themselves, oh, I'm a documentary photographer, and people often, and I feel that that's often used as an excuse to just mean that they have to, all you have to do is turn up and aim a camera in the general direction of something happening somewhere, and you push the button at some kind of the right time, and then boom, I'm now, I'm doing all I need to do.
But yeah, we both feel, and all four of us feel, that composition is like really key to everything.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's basically just this, right? So I mean, we're going to just kind of quickly, obviously you guys are all at different stages in like your journeys and your skill levels and your experiences and things, but it's so crucial to have like a basic understanding of some simple compositional tools so we can start to apply it to our work. Obviously the difference, if we're capturing the day in a documentary way, is that we're not going to be influencing what's going on. But that doesn't mean we can't be putting our own voice into it, and it doesn't mean that we can't be paying attention to this kind of stuff, so that we can use composition as the basis for making these good photos, even if we're not physically arranging the spaces that we make to make the composition in. So just going to go through a few simple like compositional things that you guys should always be aware of and looking out for. So just things like looking for frames within an image, okay? Looking for repetition in stuff. I feel naked with that.
You can have it. You can have it.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm gonna wave my arms.
Like we're going to talk.
I missed the tickle.
We're going to talk a lot about today about like staying close and shooting close and being close to what's going on. But also, sometimes it's when you pull back. Like with images like this one of Andy's here through that shot this Indian ceremony. Like sometimes it's when you pull back that you can add that foire. Like especially with things like Indian wedding ceremonies, which last 2 hours, or a long time. Like you've got to mix things up and look for other ways to make the pictures interesting and to make the moments interesting and to like here frame the moments, and then pulling back and using lines and light and angles to add interest to the pictures and interest to the moments, especially when the moments are quiet and like this type of moment. Sometimes we always go on about like shoot near, shoot far, shoot high, shoot low, like all those different kind of approaches to one moment.
But just these are just like compositional things to try and keep in mind. So always looking for clean space and isolating your subjects, And this is just this is different. Obviously, it's the sort of stuff people do when they're shooting portraits, right? We look for nice backgrounds, or we look for clean space to put our couples in. And even when we're shooting documentary, even though you're not necessarily interfering or affecting the scene in any way, you still should be asking these questions of yourself and moving yourself and changing the scenes you're shooting to make sure that the subjects are in clean space and there aren't trees coming out of their heads, or things are nice and isolated. And these are just all these things. All it comes down to is ultimately it's ways that your photos are going to be stronger. Okay,
yeah,
that's what we're trying to ultimately make. And we shouldn't use the excuse that we've captured a moment, but our goal should be to create the strongest possible image we can to enhance that moment as much as possible so that the viewer really feels the moment. Again, it's the feels.
And it's like Andy's saying, this is like good photography. Like this is just good general photography.
Just basic.
And that moment would be just as strong if those people having a great time were like in line with the really bad Rod Stewart impersonator. But
his hair's amazing.
And the client would love it just as much, and whoever that guy is would love it just as much. But it's a better photo because of the separation, because of the attention to composition. And just like less is more. Like it's not always about trying to show everything. Sometimes showing less makes people ask those questions, makes it like a cool documentary image, or in this case a detail that's a document. Like, this is not a portrait. There's no posing or staging here. This is just a kind of a detailed documentary shot. Same here. Like it's about playing, like we said, with creativity, and sometimes taking out all the context is the way to go.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Just removing stuff. That's again, we're going to come back to this a lot with you guys. It's like removing things out of the frame if we're not interested in having them in the frame is a big. And when we say removing, that doesn't necessarily physically mean like carrying the table out the way and then asking mum and daughter to be emotional in the space that it once was before.
Exactly, yeah.
It's about using yourself and your composition to move around and remove those things,
Anything that's going to weaken the image, like don't let it be in the image. The basic stuff like rule of thirds, like we have this phrase that we've borrowed from the Chrismans, our heroes. No bullseye, like don't use the center focus point on your camera and just shoot everything there. Constantly, all your subjects are in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, constantly, because the pictures will be boring, like and things will be cropped off. And we'll talk about things being cropped off later on. Yeah. But yeah, like rule of thirds, really basic
you've seen
stuff.
The rule of thirds, right, people? We know we're familiar with the rule of thirds, right?
We are going to talk about stuff today that is like egg-sucking type stuff. But it's like just important stuff to always bear in mind, and just breaking away from that central focal point on your camera. Unless you're amazing at focus recompose, which not a lot of, unless you're like lightning quick at focus recompose. Try and use some of the other focal points, because rule of thirds just makes stuff interesting. I think symmetry as well, like looking for seeing beyond, and we'll talk about light a little bit later on, and how we use light to tell stories, but seeing the way your camera sees helps to see symmetry within scenes that maybe isn't there to the totally naked eye, looking for stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And again, this kind of stuff, this like basic good photography, we should be doing this all the time. So literally just walk everywhere you go, just start training yourself to see things like the repetition, like the symmetry, like lines, just walking around. And from a wedding point of view, the moment I arrive in the morning, like all you're doing is just wandering around, just trying to soak up, all right, there's something that could potentially be interesting for photo later. All right, there's a potential natural frame that if things start to happen, I'm going to make a picture out of it. I'm going to hopefully use that to shoot, to shoot an image with, And
every image in the whole keynote, whatever you want to call it today, they're all unposed documentary images. None of the images we're going to show today have had any level of posing or staging in any way.
Yeah.
Looking for things like triangles. Like triangles is a really, 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 really strong compositional aid, and like seeing stuff, and in this case, including things in the frame to complete the triangle. Like in this case, the hands. That's what really gives power to that composition. Obviously, the eye contact is super important. Another thing that we'll talk about at some point. But I think looking for triangles, like here, triangle between these three faces, like here, just a triangle. Like because this is a Rahul shot, like because it's shot slightly wider, so you get the triangle of connection between the actual moment and then the kind of moments that happen on either side of it, instead of just like a tight crop that you'd often see at this moment in the ceremony of the hug. Which again, like if you get that shot, it's still a great moment. But adding that element of thought to the photography and to the composition gives it power, gives it some foie.
Yeah. And barging the person out of the way as well, what they call the registrar.
Yeah. This swift hip barge. But yeah, and again, we touched about before. It's something else going to come up. It's about working hard on the day, and it's about never accepting that. Oh look, they've had a hug. Boom. It's like, right, they've had a hug. Right. Quickly, like, how's the composition? How is the lines? What can I look for within this?
Later on, we're going to talk a little bit about like thinking ahead and pre-visualizing. But like Rahul jokes about, like knowing that, there's going to be an end to the ceremony, and that's when like cool moments are going to happen. Whether it's a kiss, a hug, the moments that happen around that, and knowing that you want to be in the middle. Like whether you speak to the registrar at the beginning of the ceremony or before the ceremony and say, look, I'm going to be in the middle when they do that. Like, is that cool? You just need to like say, pronounce your man and wife and do one. Like, get out of the way, because I need to be there. So it's things like that.
Yeah. So again, just a big list of all those things. Like some of this could be super obvious to some of you, but again, these are the kind of things that we shouldn't abandon just because we're moment photographers. So all we need to do is make sure that there's something like there's a human in front of our camera. It
sounds harsh, but it's just like not making documentary photography an excuse to not be a great photographer. Like you can be a great photographer and shoot documentary.
Because Uncle Bob will be a great photographer with his iPhone, so exactly. We don't need to,
So yeah, just harping on a tiny bit more about composition, just using general compositional tools, and always work. For me, composition is the hardest thing in photography. Like it's the hardest, and like I'm not a genius of composition. Like loads of my pictures are really badly composed, and getting the moment is like the important thing. But if we can all work on this and get better at the composition and get better at the kind of photography stuff that underpins it, then your moments will be stronger.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. It's about making the moment feel as strong as it possibly can,
Yeah. So yeah, just reiterating like like Andy said before, what's not in the frame is just as important as what's in it. Anything you include in that picture is a potential distraction from the moment, or it's a potential thing to give power to that moment. And you really have to think about everything. Like when you look through the viewfinder, like sometimes I'm really super aware of like my eyeball just bouncing around that viewfinder, looking at everything that's coming in at every corner. And it might just be like the case of moving forward an inch or 2 inches just to get out that fire extinguisher or whatever it might be, or just to exclude that person who's just disinterested. Because it's like so often you'll see in pictures we take ourselves, like you get this really powerful moment, and then like this bridesmaid is here. Just like you think, what are you thinking about? Why are you not connected to this thing that's happening?
On a text, Snapchat.
Yeah. So like make sure that everything that you're putting in your frame, and obviously when we get back to the computer, you can crop things out and you can work on it then. But really, if you can nail it when it happens, it's going to be better.
Again, so just what you're saying, it's about, it's super simple stuff. It's just being aware of your surroundings so that you're not including stuff that distracts from the story, And like we just said, it's basically this, it's just good photography, and it's going to make the moments in the images more appealing and more powerful to the people viewing them, which is super important because often the tricky thing shooting documentary is that, obviously as photographers, what we need is to ultimately impress future brides who love our work to come book us. And it's very easy capturing people naturally to impress the people that they know. So if you can have a nice photo of 2 friends having a cuddle, they're going to love that, and their family are going to love that, and their friends might love that. But the people that don't know who they are, to your future brides who are coming on your website, or your future couples who are visiting your work, if they do not know who these people are, then you've got to work extra hard to really connect them and engage them, because they don't necessarily know the story, they don't know the personalities that are going on there. So it's very hard to make them engage with that. So to do that, we have to pay as much attention to the composition and the light and a lot of this stuff as possible to really, hook those people into your work.
Especially in like an age when the industry feels more competitive than ever. And if everybody's showing exactly the same images, captured in exactly the same way, it's very hard to get booked then, because then it's just like, well, who's the most expensive? Who's the cheapest? Like, who's going to give me the best package? Like all that kind of stuff. Whereas if we can be better photographers and capture things better and make images that have flair and are more powerful and stand out, then everything gets easier.